It all started on a Tuesday. A glorious, sunny, suburban Tuesday. And I was on a ladder, screwdriver in my teeth, doing the most reasonable, home-ownery thing a man can do. Installing a security camera. This wasn't some CIA-grade spy apparatus. It was a Nest. A small, white, friendly-looking dome of plastic that I'd gotten on sale during Prime Day. I'm not a spy. I'm not a pervert. I'm a guy who works from home, writes code, and just wants his Amazon packages to remain his Amazon packages. Specifically, I was still smarting from the loss of a 2-pound bag of single-origin Ethiopian Yirgacheffe coffee beans, lifted directly from my porch just yesterday. The porch pirate epidemic in our neighborhood had claimed its last artisanal victim. I was lining up the final screw, whistling the theme to the A-Team, when I heard it. It wasn't a hello. It wasn't an excuse me. It was a sound that exists only in suburban ecosystems, a sound forged in the fires of petty grievance and entitlement. Ahem. I paused, screwdriver halfway to the housing. I didn't even have to look. I knew. Hello, Carol, I said, not turning around. Mark. Her voice was tight, like a violin string about to snap. What do you think you're doing? I sighed, drove the screw home, and finally turned, perching on the ladder. There she was, Carol. In the wild. She was planted on the public sidewalk, a good 40 feet away. She wore a neon pink visor, a matching tracksuit, and held a small, trembling dog that looked like a nervous, half-shorn rat. Her arms were crossed so tightly it looked like she was trying to give herself a mammogram. Hey, Carol, I said, trying for neighborly. Just installing a camera. Someone snagged my coffee beans yesterday. The nerve, right? She didn't smile. Carol doesn't smile. She just rearranges her facial muscles to express new and exciting levels of disapproval. That camera, she said, pointing a finger that was probably registered as a weapon in 3 states. Where is it pointed? I looked at the camera, then back at her. At my porch and the driveway? I gestured vaguely. You know, the crime zone? It's pointed at the street. She said street, like it was a sacred burial ground. I can see it from here. It's pointed directly at the public street. I squinted. Well, yeah, Carol. It's a wide-angle lens. It has to see the street to see who's approaching my house. That's kind of how security works. You see the threat before it's taking your coffee. She took a step forward, dragging the terrified dog with her. That is a gross violation of privacy, Mark. A gross violation. You are recording me. You are recording my dog, Barnaby. You are recording children as they play. Carol, I'm on a 6-foot ladder. You're 40 feet away. In 1080p, you're not even a person. You're just a privacy-conscious blob, a pink one. I do not consent to be recorded, she snapped. It's a public street. There's no expectation of privacy on a public street, Carol. That's like Law 101. I'm not trying to read your text messages. I just want my coffee beans. It's highly illegal, she stated, with the unshakable confidence of someone whose entire legal education came from daytime courtroom shows. You are infringing on my rights, my right to walk, unsurveilled. You're unsurveilled right now. I was getting frustrated. I haven't even hooked it up to the Wi-Fi yet. For all you know, it's a fake dome. This was a tactical error. Her eyes narrowed. So you admit it's for intimidation? No, it's just a camera. I threw my hands up, which was a bad idea on a ladder. I wobbled, grabbing the gutter. Look, it's pointed at my property. The fact that the public street is also in the background is unavoidable. What do you want me to do? Point it at the sky. Maybe I can catch a weather balloon committing a felony." "You think this is funny," she said. It wasn't a question. "You think infringing on the peace and privacy of this neighborhood is funny. I think my $40 coffee being stolen is unfunny. This is the solution." She shook her head, a slow, ominous wobble. "This is not over. It's against the rules." "What rules? The laws of physics? The camera has to see things, Carol." "You'll be hearing from the HOA, Mark." She yanked on Barnaby's leash, turned on her heel, and marched back toward her own, obsessively manicured and completely camera-free property. "You will be hearing from them." I watched her go, a small pink blot of rage receding down the sidewalk. I sighed, climbed down the ladder, and went inside to pair the camera with my phone. I dismissed it. I had to. If I let every interaction with Carol get under my skin, I'd be a walking ulcer. The HOA. Right. What were they going to do? Send me a letter? I was a member in good standing. I paid my dues. I cut my grass. I wasn't running a meth lab or painting my house purple. I was just a guy with a camera. I was confident that the HOA, run by reasonable human beings, had bigger fish to fry. I was, of course, an absolute grade A idiot. 2 days. It took exactly 2 days for the digital carrier pigeon of doom to arrive. I was in the middle of a complex line of code, trying to debug a memory leak, when the email notification chimed. From HOA Board of Directors, hoa.board, ourneighborhood.org. Subject: Official violation. Notice: Unapproved surveillance device. Ref. 442B. My blood pressure did a little tap dance. I clicked it. The email was a masterpiece of bureaucratic nonsense. It was polite, sterile, and utterly infuriating. It was written in that special dialect of passive-aggressive legalese that only middle management tyrants can truly master. I knew instinctively that while the email was from the board, the words were 100% Carol. She was the self-appointed Community Watch and Aesthetics chairperson, a title she had invented and then lobbied to have. Recognized. Dear Mr. my last name. It has come to the board's attention that an unapproved exterior modification has been made to your property. Unapproved modification? I muttered. It's a doorbell camera thing, not a second story. Specifically, a surveillance device, security camera, installed above your garage. As per the community covenants, Article 7, Section 4A, all exterior modifications must be submitted for approval to the Architectural Review Committee, and per Section 4.B, must not infringe upon the peace and privacy of fellow residents. A formal complaint has been filed, noting that your device has a direct and invasive line of sight to public property, the street, and private property, a neighboring home. A neighboring home? She lived across the street. She'd need the Hubble telescope to see into my camera lens, let alone have it see into her house. You are hereby instructed to remove the device within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $100, followed by a subsequent fine of $50 per day until the violation is rectified. Regards, the HOA Board. I sat back, stunned, not just by the threat, but by the speed. 48 hours. I grabbed my phone and called Bob. Bob was the HOA president. Bob was an accountant. Bob was a nice guy. Bob was, to put it kindly, completely and utterly spineless. He was a man who had clearly been nominated for president while he was in the bathroom, and was too polite to decline. "Hey, Bob," I said. trying to keep my voice light. Mark here, from 124 Juniper. I just got an email about my camera. A long, tired sigh came through the phone. Oh, geez. Hi, Mark. Yeah, I was afraid you'd call. Bob, come on. It's a security camera, for packages. You know about the pirates, right? They got Janet's patio furniture last week. Look, Mark, I know. I get it. I really do, Bob said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if Carol had his phone bugged. But we received a formal complaint. A very detailed one. Let me guess. Carol? I'm not at liberty to say, Mark, but the complaint, it had photographs from multiple angles and a diagram. I stopped. I'm sorry, a what? A diagram, Bob repeated, his voice full of misery. A hand-drawn, color-coded diagram showing your house, the street, and a red, transparent triangle labeled Invasive Cone of Vision. I had to sit down. A cone of vision? She gave you a cone of vision? It was very thorough, Mark. It showed the cone extending across the street and partially onto her front lawn. Bob, that's how lenses work. That's how eyes work. My eyes have a cone of vision that includes her lawn when I get the mail. Is she going to fine me for looking? Mark, please, he begged. I don't make the rules. Well, I do, but not really. Look, just angle it down. Can you do that? Point it at your welcome mat or something. Make it so it only sees your porch. Make the problem go away. Please. She said she's retaining counsel. She's what? For a camera? Just angle it down, Mark. Send me a photo. I'll mark it as resolved. We can all move on. He hung up before I could argue. Retaining counsel. Over a Nest camera. Furious, I stomped out to the garage, grabbed the ladder, and climbed back up. I felt like a chimpanzee in a lab experiment, being forced to perform for a reward. I loosened the mount and tilted the camera. I tilted it so far down it was practically filming the concrete foundation of my own house. If a porch pirate wanted to steal my packages now, they'd have to be 2 inches tall and crawl on their belly to be seen. It was useless. It was pointless. I took a picture with my phone and emailed it to Bob. Happy? I typed. I went back inside, fuming. I made a sandwich, angrily. I ate it, angrily. 20 minutes later, my phone chimed. It was from Bob. This time, the entire board was CC'd. Subject: official violation. Notice: unapproved surveillance device. Reference 442B. Mark: thank you for your prompt, though unsubmitted adjustment. Unfortunately, after review of the new photo and a brief on-site inspection by the complainant, my blood ran cold. On-site inspection, I ran to the window. Sure enough, there she was, standing on the sidewalk, phone to her ear, staring at my house. She was talking to Bob right now. It has been determined that the violation remains. The device is still capable of capturing the public walkway leading to your porch. Please be advised the 48-hour window is still in effect. The device must be removed. Regards, Bob, for the HOA board. I just snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a cold, quiet, terrifyingly clear click in the back of my brain. I was trapped. I looked at the email, then at my wall. I couldn't point it up. That's the sky, and also why. I couldn't point it down. That was still capable of seeing the walkway. And I sure as hell couldn't point it out. That was the public street. I was being checkmated by an idiot. You don't want me to point a camera at the street, I whispered to my empty office. Fine. I won't. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I didn't type, how to fight HOA. I didn't type, lawyer for camera dispute. I typed, HOA camera rules loopholes. Creative malice, HOA. How to monitor street without pointing camera at street. The results were boring. Angle it differently. Use a different brand. Plant a shrub. Useless. I was stewing, my brain on fire, when I leaned back and put my feet on the desk. My eyes drifted to the TV, which was playing some old, cheesy 90s submarine movie on mute. Some guys in Navy uniforms were yelling. The captain barked an order, and the guy at the big metal tube yelled, "Up Periscope!" I froze. My feet hit the floor. I looked back at the email. Surveillance device, security camera, installed above your garage. I looked at the covenants Bob had linked. No camera shall be permanently affixed in a manner that points at a neighboring property or public street. A camera. Pointed. A periscope isn't a camera. It's an optical instrument. And you don't point it. You look through it. And if I put a camera inside my house, pointed only at the eyepiece, a slow, dangerous, and utterly unhinged grin spread across my face. This was no longer about coffee beans. This was about art. This was about science. I opened a new browser tab. Marine salvage yards near me. The next morning, I was a man on a mission. I felt a giddy, manic energy I hadn't felt since I was a teenager pulling an all-nighter. I was going to do this. I was going to do this right. My first call was a misfire. I dialed a number for Dave's Dandy Handyman service. Dave's Dandy, a gruff voice answered. Hi, Dave. My name's Mark. I have a somewhat unusual installation job. I was wondering if you do roofing work. I do shingles. I do gutters. What you need? Okay, good. So what I need, I said, trying to sound as normal as possible, is to install a very tall metal tube on my roof. It needs to go through the roof, and the attic, and into my office on the second floor. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end. I could hear breathing. Like a chimney? Dave asked, his voice full of suspicion. No, not a chimney. More observational. It's a periscope. A what? A periscope, I repeated, enunciating. You know, from a submarine, but like a really tall one, probably 30 feet, to clear the roofline and get a good view. Another pause. This one was longer. I heard what sounded like a sandwich being chewed. Sir, Dave said finally, I unclog drains. I install ceiling fans. I'm gonna pass on this one. The line clicked. He'd hung up on me. Okay, so not a handyman. I needed a specialist. I needed someone who wasn't afraid of a little structural absurdity. My Google search for marine salvage had led me to a place about 30 miles out of town, near the industrial port. The website looked like it was designed in 1998, all flashing text and grainy photos of anchors. The name was Mitch's Metal and Marine Fabrication. I called. A woman with a thick Boston accent answered. Mitch's. Hi, I need to speak to someone about a custom fabrication and installation. It's a residential job. Residential? We do boat hulls, kid. We do docks. We don't do, what, handrails? I need to install a surplus submarine periscope on my house. The woman didn't pause. She didn't even laugh. Oh, geez. Okay. You need Mitch. Hold on. Mitch, phone. Guy wants a periscope on his house. I heard a muffled roar in the background, the sound of heavy machinery powering down, and then a new voice picked up the phone. A voice that sounded like it ate gravel for breakfast. This is Mitch. What's this I hear? An hour later, Mitch himself was standing in my driveway. He was a huge man, built like a refrigerator, with a welding mask tan, pale around the eyes, leathery everywhere else. His forearms, which emerged from a rolled-up flannel shirt, were like anvils. He'd pulled up in a massive Ford F-350 dually that looked like it could tow my entire house off its foundation. He stood on my driveway, looked at my perfectly normal beige-sided suburban house, looked at the quiet street, looked at the flower beds, and then looked at me. "Okay," he said, crossing his arms. "I read your email on the drive over. You're pulling my leg, right? This is for one of those YouTube prank shows." "I am 100% serious," I said. I pointed across the street. As if on cue, Carol's blinds twitched. "I have a neighbor problem." Mitch's eyes followed my finger. He saw the blinds twitch. He looked back at me. A slow dawning of comprehension, and then respect spread across his face. "Ah," he grunted, the word heavy with meaning. "An HOA problem." "The worst kind," I said. "She complained my security camera was pointed at the street, so I'm taking the street out of the equation. I'm going over it. I want to see the whole neighborhood." Mitch actually smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful thing. It was all teeth. You, I like. All right, show me the office. Let's talk structural." We went inside. I led him up to my office, which was directly under the main roof peak. He stomped on the floor, knocked on the walls, and then stared at the ceiling. "Attic's above this?" "Yep. Gimme." He motioned to the attic pull. I tugged it, and he ascended the flimsy ladder, which groaned in protest. I followed him up into the dusty, cramped space. He clicked on a massive flashlight and started examining the joists and rafters. His professional demeanor kicked in. He was no longer a skeptical metalworker. He was a brilliant engineer of beautiful, spiteful solutions. "Okay," he said, shining his beam on the central trusses. "You got a standard WB truss system. Load-bearing walls are here. And here. Your peak is high. That's good. We can't just cut a hole. You'll compromise the integrity of the whole roof. We're gonna need to build a new load path. We'll have to double up these joists, maybe triple them. Then we build a custom-braced cradle, anchor it right here, and here." He was mapping it all out in his head. "The scope itself, I can get one. I know a guy at the shipyard in Norfolk. They're breaking down an old Los Angeles-class boat. I can probably get the whole Type 8 optical set. It'll be heavy, maybe 800 pounds for the main tube and head." "Can the house take it?" "Oh yeah," Mitch said, patting a rafter. "After I'm done with it, you could land a helicopter on this roof. We'll need to fabricate a custom steel mounting plate and a neoprene and copper flashing kit to make it waterproof. This ain't no simple skylight. This is a commitment. We're talking wind shear. We're talking thermal expansion. You get a 30-foot steel tube on your roof. The wind's gonna make it sing." "I like singing," I said. We climbed back down into my office, both of us covered in dust and insulation. "This ain't gonna be cheap," Mitch said, pulling out a notepad and a thick carpenter's pencil. "We're talking custom fabrication for the housing. We're talking structural reinforcement. We're talking sourcing the optics, plus the crane rental for the lift." "What's the I hate my neighbor price?" I asked, pulling my checkbook from the desk. Mitch let out a low, appreciative whistle. He scribbled some numbers. "It's a lot of hate." He showed me the number. My eyes widened. It was a lot of hate. It was new car down payment levels of hate. "But," Mitch added, grinning, "it'll be beautiful. And I can probably get the optics cleaned and the nitrogen purged. It'll have night vision. Basic thermal, too." I had a flash of Carol walking Barnaby at 2 a.m., rendered in a ghostly green and black. I picked up a pen. "Done." "One last thing," I said, as I started writing the check for the deposit. "The legality. The HOA, the permits." Mitch's grin widened. That's the best part. I'm a licensed contractor. We're not installing a periscope. A periscope ain't in the building code. No one knows what to do with it. So we file the permit with the city as an ornamental skylight fixture. Custom. Ornamental, I said, savoring the word. I like it. Sounds classy. Or, how about a ventilation shaft variation? Mitch offered. No, ornamental fixture is perfect. It's aesthetically pleasing. Mitch laughed, a sound like a rock tumbler. He tore the check from the book and folded it into his pocket. He crushed my hand in a handshake that nearly broke my metacarpals. This, Mitch said, his eyes gleaming with the light of pure, unadulterated mischief, is the best job I've had all year. I'll have my guys here Monday to start the attic work. The scope will take about 2 weeks to source and refurbish. As he walked out, he paused on my porch and looked back. Oh, and Mark? Paint. What color do you want the tube? Standard navy issue haze gray? Haze gray, I confirmed, is perfect. The next 2 weeks were a symphony of beautiful, spiteful construction. Mitch's team was a well-oiled machine. They were discreet, professional, and looked like the road crew for a heavy metal band. They spent the first few days entirely in my attic, reinforcing the roof structure. The sound, however, was not discreet. It was a glorious cacophony of circular saws, impact drivers, and the occasional clang of heavy steel being bolted into place. I sat in my office, trying to work, a happy little smirk on my face with every whir of the drill. I could only imagine what Carol was thinking. Through my window, I saw her on her lawn, hands on hips, staring at my house, her face a mask of pure, confused rage. The sounds were all internal. There was no visible change, yet. Naturally, an email arrived. From HOA Board of Directors. Subject, urgent. Cease and desist. Unapproved construction. Reference 442 to C. Mr., my last name. It has been brought to the board's attention via numerous complaints that you are conducting unauthorized, large-scale construction within your property. The noise is a significant disturbance to the peace of the community. All work must cease and desist immediately until you have submitted the proper plans to the Architectural Review Committee. Failure to comply will result in more fines, more threats, blah, blah, blah. I hit reply. From Mark. Subject, urgent, cease and desist. Dear Board, and Carol, who I know is reading this, thank you for your concern. Please be assured that all work is fully permitted and approved. I have attached a copy of the permit filed with and approved by the city. As you can see, we are simply installing an ornamental skylight fixture. I'm as excited as you are to see the finished product. Have a great day, Mark. I attached the PDF of the city permit with its official stamp and Bob's own signature from the HOA's preliminary approval, which he'd clearly rubber-stamped without reading. The silence that followed was delicious. There was no response. The saws whirred on. Then the big day came. It was a Friday. I took the day off work. At 8 a.m., the entire street vibrated. A massive flatbed truck, the kind they use to move tanks, rumbled down our quiet suburban lane. On its bed, strapped down with heavy chains, was a 30-foot, sleek, navy gray metal tube. Its optical head was wrapped in protective plastic. It looked like a missile. It looked like a piece of a battleship. It looked glorious. Right behind it was a 40-ton construction crane, which settled in front of my house with a pneumatic hiss and began extending its stabilizers, crushing a small, rebellious patch of dandelions on my lawn. The neighborhood emptied. It was as if a silent alarm had gone off. People emerged from their homes, coffee mugs in hand, staring. Phones were raised. Dave from down the street, who was perpetually washing his car, just stood there, hose in hand, water pooling around his ankles. And then, the main event. Carol's front door flew open. She burst onto her lawn, wearing a bright yellow bathrobe and, for some reason, gardening clogs. Barnaby was yapping frantically at her heels. "Stop!" she shrieked, sprinting across her lawn and onto the street. "Stop this! Stop this right now!" Mitch, who was directing the crane operator, saw her coming. He sighed and clicked the small radio on his shoulder. "What are you doing?" Carol screamed, her voice cracking. "What is that? You can't put a smokestack on your house." I was on my porch, sipping my new bag of Ethiopian yirgachefe, delivered to my office, thank you. "Morning, Carol," I called out, giving a friendly wave. "It's not a smokestack, it's my ornamental skylight. All approved?" I helpfully waved my copy of The Permit. Mitch's voice boomed over the crane's loudspeaker, staticky and godlike. "Ma'am, I need you to stand back. This is an active lift. You are in a hard hat only zone. Please return to the public sidewalk." This is illegal," she sputtered, but she was motioned back by a massive, tattooed crew member who looked like he could deadlift her car. The crane operator gave a thumbs up. The straps went taut. And then, it happened. Slowly, majestically, the 30-foot periscope lifted from the flatbed. It rose into the air, a monument to spite, clearing the power lines, clearing my roof. It hung there for a perfect, silent moment against the blue sky, the entire neighborhood staring in dumbfounded awe. Mitch's crew, 2 on the roof and 1 in my attic, were all on radios. "Okay, bring her down. Slow, slow." The crane pivoted. The massive tube descended. Mitch's guys on the roof, harnessed like mountaineers, grabbed the base of it. They guided it. And with a sound like a giant, well-oiled key sliding into a lock, it slotted perfectly through the pre-cut, reinforced hole in my roof. There was a flurry of activity as they bolted it into the steel cradle, followed by sealing and flashing. An hour later, the crane was gone. The truck was gone. The neighborhood was silent. It was done. A 30-foot navy gray periscope now towered over my 1-story suburban home. Its optical head, now unwrapped, glinted in the sun. It looked, frankly, amazing. It gave the whole house a certain military-industrial charm. I went inside, my heart pounding. I walked up to my office. And there it was, the base of the periscope. It was beautiful, a thick steel column rising from my floor, with brass handles for rotating, a large wheel for focusing, and a soft, rubberized eyepiece. Mitch's team had even affixed a small brass plaque they'd apparently made as a bonus. It read, "The Carroll Type 8 Observational Rig Aced 2025. I put my hands on the brass grips. They were cool to the touch. I leaned forward and put my eye to the lens. My breath caught. I wasn't looking at my street. I was above it. With a slight turn of the wheel, the world snapped into focus. I could see everything. I could see the roof of Carol's house. I could see a bald spot on her husband, Herb, I'd never noticed. I could see the high school football team practicing 3 miles away. I turned the other way. I could see the donut shop. I could read the menu in the window. "Oh," I whispered, a single happy tear rolling down my cheek. "This is so much better than a Ring camera." I spent the next 10 minutes in a state of pure, unadulterated bliss, mapping out my new domain. I could see the clog in the gutter on the back of Dave's house. I could see that the Millers, 2 streets over, were putting in an unapproved pool. I saw it all. Naturally, I was also watching Carol. Through the powerful 40x magnification, I saw her on her lawn, her face a shade of puce I had not thought humanly possible. She was screaming into her cell phone. I couldn't hear her, of course, but the body language was universal. She was stabbing her finger at my house, shaking her head, and pacing in frantic, tight circles. I rotated the Periscope back to the donut shop, made a mental note to get a cruller later, and then rotated it back. Carol was gone. Ah well. Back to work. I had just settled at my desk, feeling victorious, when I heard the other sound of suburban drama. Sirens. They weren't loud, just a quick whoop whoop as they turned onto our street. I didn't even bother with the window. I just swiveled in my chair, put my eye to the scope, and looked. A police cruiser was pulling up to the curb, not in front of my house, but in front of Carol's. I watched as she burst from her door, gesticulating wildly, and pointed right at my roof. A few minutes later, the cruiser rolled forward and parked in front of my house. The knock on the door was heavy and official. I went down and opened it. 2 officers stood on my porch. One was older, with a face like a worn leather briefcase and a name tag that read Miller. He looked like he'd seen everything and was tired of all of it. The other was young, fit, and had a name tag that read Chen. He was clearly trying to look serious, but his eyes kept darting up to the 30-foot tube of steel sticking out of my roof. He looked impressed. "Afternoon," Officer Miller said, his voice a low rumble. "Are you the homeowner?" "I am," I said, leaning on the doorframe. "Mark, can I help you, officers?" Miller sighed. It was a sigh that carried the weight of 1,000 petty disputes. "Sir, we received a call from your neighbor, a 911 call." "Is she okay?" I asked, with faux concern. Miller's eye twitched. "She's fine. Sir, she reported that you have installed a, and I'm quoting here, military weapon on your roof. She also mentioned spying and perversion." "A weapon?" I laughed. "Officer, that's absurd. It's an optical instrument. It's not even electronic. It's just lenses and mirrors. It's an ornamental fixture. Come on in. I'll show you." I stepped back. The 2 cops looked at each other. Miller sighed again. Chen looked excited. They stepped inside. I led them up the stairs to my office. They walked in and just stopped. Dead. Their eyes went to the massive, gray steel column that now dominated the room. They stared at the brass handles, the eyepiece, the little plaque. "Whoa," Officer Chen breathed, all pretense of jaded professionalism gone. Is that real? From a submarine?" "Decommissioned Los Angeles class, I believe," I said proudly. "Mitch's Metal and Marine sourced it for me. Want to look?" Officer Chen didn't wait for Miller. He was at the eyepiece in a flash. "Holy," he whispered. He grabbed the handles. "It moves! Miller, you gotta see this. I can see the high school. I can see the water tower over on 8 Mile." Officer Miller was rubbing the bridge of his nose, his eyes closed. "Sir, Mr. Mark." He opened his eyes. "Sir, why do you have this?" "It's a long story, officer," I said, sitting on the corner of my desk. "But the short version is, my neighbor complained my security camera was pointed at the street. The HOA fined me. They said I couldn't have a camera pointed at the street." I pointed to the corner of my office. There, on a simple tripod, was a small, high-definition camcorder. "So," I continued, "I got rid of the camera outside. This is a Periscope, an ornamental fixture per my city-approved permit." I handed him the paperwork. He took it, glanced at it, and looked even more tired. "And that," I said, pointing to the camcorder, "is my new security camera. It's inside my house. And as you can see, it is pointed only at the Periscope's eyepiece. It is not pointed at the street. It's not pointed at her house. It's pointed at my own property. Specifically, at my antique, ornamental, nautical fixture. 100% HOA compliant." Chen was stifling a laugh. He'd pulled away from the eyepiece and was pretending to examine a bookshelf. Officer Miller stared at the setup. He looked at the Periscope. He looked at the camcorder pointed at the eyepiece. He looked at the permit. He looked at me. He sighed. It was the deepest, most profound sigh of human suffering I had ever heard. "Sir," he said, handing the permit back, "it's not illegal. It's just really, really weird. And it's technically not a weapon." "Told you," I said. "But," he said, pointing a stern finger at me, "you are not to use this to spy on your neighbors. We get one more call, one credible call, that you are using this for perversion, and we'll be back." "Understood, officer. It's purely for exterior security and admiring the architecture of the donut shop." Miller just shook his head. "Come on, Chen. Let's go." He turned to me. "Sir, please, just try to be a good neighbor." "I was trying to be," I said, "when I installed the $80 Nest camera." Miller didn't have an answer for that. He just turned and walked out. "That," Officer Chen whispered to me as he passed, "is awesome. My brother-in-law is on a sub. He'd love this." "Tell him to stop by," I said. I watched them leave. I didn't need the window. I went back to the Periscope. I swiveled it around and zoomed in. I watched, in 40x crystal-clear magnification, as Officer Miller and Officer Chen walked across the street to Carol's house. I watched Miller talk to her. I couldn't hear, but I could see his "I'm tired of this" stance. I saw him shake his head. I saw him hand her what looked like a pamphlet. And then I saw her shriek. She threw the pamphlet on the ground. The cops just turned, got in their car, and drove away. I swiveled the Periscope back to the high school. They were practicing field goals. Nice. The Periscope had won the battle with the police, but the war with the HOA was far from over. Carol, having failed to have me arrested for possessing a weapon, immediately escalated to her only other source of power: the board. An emergency HOA meeting was called. The subject, in all caps in the email, was the Juniper Street Abomination. I marked my calendar. I was so excited. The meeting was held on a Wednesday night in the community clubhouse. The clubhouse was a sad, beige room that usually hosted book club and bunco night. Tonight, it was standing room only. It was the biggest turnout in HOA history. The air was thick with tension, cheap coffee, and the smell of stale shortbread. I saw Bob, the HOA president, at the front table. He looked green. He was visibly sweating and avoiding my gaze. The rest of the board, 2 women and another man, looked equally terrified. Carol, however, was in her element. She was at the front, next to a wobbly easel that held a giant hand-drawn poster board. She was wearing a severe-looking pantsuit. She looked like a low-level prosecutor in a community theater play. Bob gavelled the meeting to order, his hand shaking. Okay, thank you all for coming. We have an emergency item. As you all know, there has been a new installation at 124 Juniper. Carol, you have the floor. Carol stood up, her eyes sweeping the room with grim satisfaction. Thank you, Robert. She picked up a laser pointer. Friends, neighbors, for 5 years I have worked to maintain the aesthetic integrity and peaceful enjoyment of our community. She told me my garden gnomes were tacky, someone muttered from the back. Carol ignored it. But now, she said, we face a threat to our privacy, a threat to our children, a threat to our very property values. She clicked the laser pointer and aimed it at her poster board. The poster was a testament to her insanity. It was a giant, blurry photo of my house, taken from her lawn. The Periscope was circled, over and over, in thick red marker. Arrows pointed to it, with labels like invasive, pervert tower, and military grade. This abomination, she spat, was erected by that man. She pointed the laser pointer at my chest, and I brushed the red dot off my shirt. For one reason and one reason only, to spy on us, to look into our homes, to watch our wives, to watch our children. What if I'm sunbathing? She shrieked, her voice cracking. A guy in the back, Dave, the car washer, called out. You don't have a pool, Carol, and your backyard is fenced. A few people snickered. Carol's face flushed. That's not the point. It's an eyesore. It's un-American. It's weird. And it's in direct violation of our covenants. She sat down to scattered, nervous applause. Bob looked at me. Mark, do you have a rebuttal? I do, I said. I stood up, walked to the front, and pulled out a USB stick. I was wearing my best suit. I'd even put on a tie. Brenda, I said to the board secretary, could you plug this into the projector? I have a small PowerPoint. Carol scoffed. But the projector whirred to life, and the wall was illuminated. My first slide was simple. White background, black text. Slide 1. The ornamental fixture at 124 Juniper. A brief overview of covenant compliance. Good evening, everyone, I said, my voice calm and friendly. I understand there's a lot of concern about my new hobby. I'm here to clear things up. First, let's address the eyesore claim. I'd argue it's historic nautical decor. Tastes vary. Some people like gnomes, some people like 30-foot periscopes. The gnome guy gave me a thumbs up. But taste isn't in the covenants. Compliance is. Carol is correct that Article 7, Section 4. Is the relevant rule. Let's read it together. I clicked to the next slide. Slide 2. The rule. Article 7, Section 4.b. No camera shall be permanently affixed to the exterior of a property in a manner that points at a neighboring property or public street. Please note the 2 key phrases, I said, using my own laser pointer, which was a professional-grade green one, not her wobbly red one. The rule specifies a camera, and it specifies that said camera cannot be pointed at the street. But it is, Carol shouted. It's a giant camera. Is it? I said, clicking to the next slide. Slide 3. What is a camera? Webster's Dictionary. An apparatus for taking photographs, consisting of a light-proof box with a lens at one end and light-sensitive film, or a digital sensor at the other. My Periscope, I explained, has no film. It has no digital sensor. It's a series of lenses and mirrors in a tube. It is, by definition, an optical instrument, like a telescope or a pair of binoculars. It is not a camera. I clicked again. Slide 4. My actual camera. This slide showed a crystal-clear, high-definition photo I had taken that afternoon. It was of my office. It showed my desk, my computer, and the tripod in the corner. This, I said, is my security camera. As you can see, it is inside my home. And as you can also see, it is pointed. I had a red arrow indicating the camera's lens, at my Periscope's eyepiece. It is not pointed at the street. It is not pointed at Carol's house. It is pointed at my own personal property. It is 100% compliant with Section 4B. The room was dead silent. People were just processing. And finally, I said, clicking to my last slide, the abomination itself. Slide 5. The permit. This was a high-resolution scan of the approved city permit. And in the corner, a scan of the HOA's own architectural form, which I had submitted. As you can all see, I said, this is the city-approved permit for an ornamental skylight fixture. And this, I pointed to the other document, is the HOA's own pre-approval form, which I submitted under the exterior modification other category. It was approved and stamped. I pointed my laser, not at the screen, but at the front table. Bob, that's your signature, isn't it? Bob went from green to stark white. He looked at the screen. He looked at me. He looked like a man who had just swallowed a bug. Carol jumped to her feet. He tricked you, Bob. He lied. It's not a skylight. On the contrary, I said, it's in the shape of a tube, and it lets light in from the sky. It's an ornamental skylight. It's just a very, very specific one. The HOA's lawyer, a woman in an expensive suit, who had been quiet the whole time, leaned over and whispered something to Bob for a solid 30 seconds. Bob just nodded, his eyes closed, his face a mask of utter defeat. He tapped the microphone. Ahem. His voice was a tiny squeak. After reviewing the bylaws, and the submitted and approved paperwork, and after consulting with our counsel, he took a deep breath. My last name, is technically in compliance. The structure is not a camera, and the permit was approved. The fixture can stay. The room was silent for exactly 1 beat. Then Carol let out a shriek. It wasn't a word. It was a sound from the deep, dark places of the human soul. It was a sound of such pure, distilled rage that the windows rattled. "You!" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. And with that, she grabbed her stupid poster board, tore it in half, and stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door so hard the bunco night schedule fell off the wall. The room was quiet again. Then, in the back, someone started to clap. It was Dave. Then the gnome guy joined in. Then a few others. It wasn't an ovation, but it was a clear-cut victory. I nodded to the board, clicked my USB stick out of the laptop, and walked out, a free man. Life, as they say, finds a way. And life in our neighborhood found a new, slightly more bizarre, normal. The first and most beautiful change was the "For Sale" sign that appeared on Carol's lawn exactly 1 week after the HOA meeting. It was a glorious, bright red sign, and I made sure to get a nice, clear 40x snapshot of it through the Periscope. I heard from Bob, who was now surprisingly friendly, that she was moving to a gated community, one with no yards, and, presumably, underground homes. I wished her well. My house became a local legend. The neighborhood kids who used to cut across my lawn now stopped at the edge of it, pointed, and whispered. They started calling my place the Submarine House, or my personal favorite, the Eye of Mark. I was fine with it. My lawn has never looked better. But the real, true justification for the entire endeavor, the thousands of dollars, the fight with the cops, the HOA showdown, came about a month later. I was in my office, finishing up work. It was dusk. I was idly scanning the neighborhood, just enjoying the sunset views over the high school, when I saw something. A suspicious, beat-up blue van, one I'd never seen before, was cruising slowly down the street. It stopped, not in front of my house, but in front of my neighbor's house. The Millers, 2 streets over, the ones with the unapproved pool. I watched. A man in a hoodie got out of the passenger side. He looked left, looked right, and then jogged up to the Millers' porch. They had a large white box sitting there. Looked like a new computer. The man grabbed the box, tucked it under his arm, and started jogging back to the van. I spun around in my chair. I didn't call the cops. There wasn't time. I grabbed the new toy I'd bought online last week, just for an occasion such as this. I opened my office window, stuck the megaphone out, and pressed the button. My voice, amplified to a terrifying, godlike volume, boomed across the entire neighborhood. "Hey! Hey, you! In the hoodie, with the blue van!" The man froze. He was halfway to his van. He looked around, his eyes wide with panic. He couldn't see me. "Yeah, you! The porch pirate!" I yelled. "Put the box down! I see you! I am currently watching you in 40x military-grade magnification." The thief looked up. He looked everywhere. He was utterly terrified. He couldn't figure out where the voice was coming from. It was coming from the sky. Then his eyes landed on my house. He saw it. The giant, gray, 30-foot periscope. The unblinking glass eye of the optical head aimed directly at him. He yelped. I heard it, even from 2 streets away. He didn't just drop the box. He threw it, scrambled into the van, and screamed, "Go, go, go!" The van peeled out so fast it left a strip of rubber on the asphalt. A moment later, Mr. Miller came running out of his house, alerted by the megaphone. He saw the box on his lawn, looked around, and then looked over at my house. I pulled the megaphone back in, and just gave him a little 2-finger salute from my office window. He looked confused, but he waved back. I leaned back in my chair and put my eye back to the scope. The thief's van was just a speck in the distance, running a stop sign. I swiveled the periscope back to the donut shop. The hot and fresh sign was on. I'd lost a $40 bag of coffee beans, and in return, I'd spent a small fortune, terrified my neighbor into moving, and made my house a permanent weird-ass landmark. It was, I thought, the best damned security system in the world. I took a sip of my coffee and started browsing Mitch's Metal and Marine again. I wondered. Just wondered. Wonder if I can get a torpedo tube attachment.